Okay, so here we have the long-awaited Chinarello cut-up video. So it's something I've been wanting to do for quite some time and just haven't had the time and the resources, etc., to do it. So we finally got around to it. I've cut both of the bikes, a real one and the Chinarello, in half, and we can have a really close look at them. So a little while ago, I posted up a picture, or did a post on whether you could tell the difference between the real one and the fake one visually. Um, and some of you got it right. Some people did. Some people got it wrong. So now this Cinnarello came to me because the rider in question had a JRA failure. So he was just riding along, and and then the bike started developing a little bit of a problem, and that's he at that point then he decided, oh, I think it's time to donate it to science, and yeah, and it came through to me, and yeah, so I'll show you what that problem is later on in the video. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag just yet. I want to show you why I believe this problem occurred, and then we'll talk about that sort of further on. So let's um, let's have a look at the at this bike. So let's get into it. So from the outside, you can see that from a shape point of view, they're very, very similar. Like they're almost identical. There are some very slight little differences, um, pretty minimal. Now, the Cinarello is a slightly larger frame. It's compared to the same one of the real Pinarello that I had um, to cut up. So it's a little bit larger. Now, oddly enough, the Cinarello was the one which had made in Italy, as you can see in the image there on the right. So the Cinarello had the made in Italy on the seat tube, and the real one didn't. So I thought that was sort of quite funny. So looking a little bit closer, you can see I've written the weights on the head tube there. So the Cinarello is 1126 grams, and the genuine is 1056. But as I said, the genuine is slightly smaller frame, so that can account for some of the weight. So the weight's pretty comparable. But yeah, probably this image is a good indication. You can see the molding for the cable insert. So in this on the Cinarello, it's sort of in line with the down tube, and on the genuine, it sort of goes across. It's sort of angled a bit further down. So that's sort of one of the giveaways. The other little thing is the weave. You can see on the Chinarello that they're just using a 3K standard weave, where on the genuine they use a 1K, which is a much sort of finer fabric, and it's sort of got more of a black sort of mist through it. Um, you can also see on the right hand side on the chainstay, the genuine says under that 65 HM1K, it says nano alloy technology. So that's there. So that's their resin system. Um, and on the fake, it still says 65 HM1K. Now it's sort of funny that they say 1K on a 3K fabric, but if you don't know what you're talking about or looking at, then it probably makes sense. But yeah, that's definitely not 1K fabric. So yeah, so there's some of the visual things on the outside. Okay, let's get straight into it. The bottom bracket area. That's sort of it's always an interesting area because there's lots of things going on. Um, you know, the geometry, the molding, all that sort of stuff. We got the bottom bracket shell. Now, on the left is the real, on the right is the fake. Now, looking at these images, they both look pretty ordinary to me, actually. You've got quite a bit of variation in the compaction. Ridges of resin, etc. Maybe a little bit worse in the Chinarello. So you've got this sort of section through here, and wrinkles there, and wrinkles there, and wrinkles there, and but then the interesting thing is they've got a bit of a foam insert here as a reinforcement. Just to get rid of those lines there, so back to C. The way the bottom bracket is bonded in is pretty similar. There's a flange on the outside, and there's also some pins that stop the thing from twisting. You can see there's one pin there on that picture here. So, yeah, both of them, like as you can see, they don't look super clean. On the genuine one, you've got this sort of this material here, which is sort of left over from the bladder molding process. It's sort of some of the EPS, which is left in there. Now on the fake, they use a different process, so it's more of a conventional bladder as opposed to the EPS molded process. So yes, that's the bottom bracket. You'd say that the genuine is slightly better, but not much. So here's the chainstay to bottom bracket, the junction there, the bonded junction. So you've got the front triangle, which is a separate piece, and then the chainstays are bonded to that. So this is that bonded joint from the chainstays to the bottom bracket. So you can see on both that there are voids, through this area here, top and bottom. So pretty much pretty similar in that regard. Now I have seen over the years quite a few failures, crack indications, etc. at this junction on genuine Pinarellos, particularly on the non-drive side for some reason. Maybe it's the asymmetrical design which sort of which leads to that problem. I did many years ago. There was I think it was a Pinarello Prince, must have been probably around 2010 or something like that, and it had cracked on the non-drive side in that spot. And when I investigated further, I found that there was no adhesive in the joint at all, which was quite a surprise. So they do suppose they bond that joint, and then they put a ply of material over to sort of tie it all together to stop any cracks, adhesive cracks presenting themselves. But in this case, in that particular case of that Prince, there wasn't any adhesive, so it was just that single ply holding it all together. So anyway, we did repair that one. The other thing of note, you can see a little bit of red overspray sort of through here on this one, but yeah, overall both of them are not great. The chainstay molding itself is okay. It doesn't seem to be too bad. Doesn't seem to have any wrinkles or too much going on in that shot anyway. And then moving up to the dropout junction. So this is obviously the drive side. You've got the derailleur hanger attachment screws or countersunk screws. Now on the real one, there seems to be more wrinkling going on sort of through here. So you've got this cable port which is molded in, and then a riv nut to attach the guide to, which is the same on both. But the fake actually looks cleaner through here. The molding looks cleaner. Yeah, less wrinkling of fibre sort of going on through there. The dropout being bonded in looks pretty similar. There's good amount of adhesive. There's some adhesive spew out sort of here and also here, sort of about the same. So looks like there's sufficient adhesive. And then the same with the seat stay junction. All that looks pretty good on both of them. But out of these two, you'd probably look that the fake is molded a little bit cleaner. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean it's going to be stronger or better, because that depends on the fibre type and all that sort of stuff, which we don't know from this. We don't know how what grade fibre they use, what resin, etc. So just keep that in mind. That's a sort of a separate thing, and that's pretty difficult to post-process. It can be done, but it's not a simple thing. Now this is where it gets really, really interesting, and there's quite some differences at this junction. So this is obviously the seat tube junction, and you can see on the genuine, there's quite a lot of wrinkling going on. Like you've got through here. Now this the seat post insert, which is this sort of section through here, is bonded in to the molded frame, and there's basically no adhesive in that joint. So like that, this edge here, that's supposed to be bonded to that part there, and there's no adhesive. There's adhesive on the surfaces, but there's no adhesive joining it. So they haven't put enough adhesive in that section, and that section is actually just floating in space. So that can't take any load at all. On the forward edge, you can see there is some adhesive, but you can also see the voids. So a couple of nice big voids through here, and they sort of continue around the underside. So so this is actually pretty ordinary. So the only real attachment of the of that insert, of that seat tube insert, is up through the top, through here, and a little bit through here, but the rest of it is unsupported. So that's not great. You can also see sort of leading into the top tube, there's a lot more going on sort of through here with sort of wrinkling. We'll have a bit more of a closer look at that in a minute. Looking at the Chinarello, they've got a similar sort of insert, but it's actually really well supported. So they've got some structural foam, some syntactic foam, to assist with the molding and the bonding in these areas. That's that white stuff there. So so that's supporting that area really well. So in this case, for this area, I'd rate the Chinarello as being superior to the real Pinarello, in the way that seat junction is put together. Now the seat junction is often underestimated in terms of its load, the way it's loaded, and it's actually quite a high stress area of the bike. If you hit a pothole at speed while in the saddle, you actually put a lot of load through that area. So it's that's something to be aware of. But yeah, so on the score would lean towards the Chinarello at this junction. Looking at that. Now we've got the head tube junction, and again they look quite similar. The real Pinarello has got, and we'll go to some close-ups in a minute, but it looks a bit cleaner. It doesn't seem to be much in the way of wrinkles or resin ridges or anything like that. A little bit of residue from the EPS block, the bladder molding system sort of through here. I overdrew the red line. Let me get rid of that one. Yeah, it's just sort of this region here. You can see that stuff. So yeah, that's looking not too bad. If we go to the fake, we've got sort of more of what we see with a traditional bladder molding process, where we've got joins in the bag, and leading to those compaction variables and the wrinkles and things like that. So let's go have a closer look at the lower head tube junction. So now what's really interesting here is the difference in laminate thickness, so in this area here. So you can see that laminate is very thick. So that's a good strong piece of laminate going on through there. On the Chinarello, you can see the difference. It's very, very thin, and then they've just put some foam filler between a few plies at that transition, where the fork seal sits up in there. Now you can't really see the other damage, but we'll get to that later on. I'll talk about that a bit later on. But the other thing of note is you can see that the headset, the lower headset race it's basically not seated in the carbon, so you can see that there's that void, that black line through there, and the cup, the aluminium headset cup, which is bonded in, is not fully up against the frame. So that's it's not taking the load properly. Whereas on the genuine, this whole area is much better put together. So in this situation, the head tube, the genuine is much is far more superior in its construction. Looking at the top bearing race, on the head tube, we've got a similar thing, and you can see that there's again a void, and it's not really seated sort of in this area through here, and obviously all the way around. There's a little bit of foam to try and fill that, and then you can see the resin wrinkles and stuff from the bag. Now on the genuine, there's also this tiny piece of foam through here, sort of to blend that sort of transition and that radius sort of through here. But the bearing race itself is seated in well. You can see how that laminate looks well compacted. There's no excess resin or anything like that. So again, that's this section will give the points to the genuine. Okay, here we have the down tube. Looking at them, they're pretty similar. There's not really much difference between them. There may be differences in the fiber type, but the actual laminate looks pretty similar. In that case, so not really much more to comment about that. They both got the Faker's got extra woven material there where the inserts go, so both of them have got that. So not really much difference to report there. And so here we have the seat stay to the seat tube junction. Now on both of them you can see some voids in the adhesive, particularly on the genuines. It's probably a little bit worse than what you've got on the fake. Certainly the void's bigger at that section. The molding through that sort of compound curvature, sort of particularly through here, there's quite a lot of wrinkles and a bit of mess going on through there, so that's sort of not ideal. Seems to be a little bit cleaner on the genuine through that. You can also see up at the at that what I was talking about before, that void through there, and it's that being unsupported, whereas this whole section through here is actually pretty solid on the fake. And then the whole seat stay. So apart from that sort of little bit up the top here where it's wrinkled, the rest of it looks pretty clean. Now, due to that shape, it is probably not the easiest shape to mold well. And I mean, the simple rule of thumb with composite molding is the simpler the shape is, the easier it is to lay up. So, if you've got tight corners and lots of returns and things like that, it just makes it more complex to lay up, so you're more likely to have problems. It's really that simple. So, I've said before about making a straight round tube. You can make that's easier to make, so you're more likely for it to be well made because it's easier to make. So, the more complex your shape is, the more likely you are to have some of these molding problems. And then we've got the attachment of the front derailleur hanger. Now, one thing that was picked up from the external shot of that area with the rivets, that the rivets on the fake were just plain aluminium rivets, and at least on the genuine they were anodized black. So now one of the reasons that it's beneficial to have the rivets anodized is the galvanic corrosion. So because they're in direct contact with the carbon, if you get an electrolyte in there, such as sweat, it'll corrode much quicker due to the galvanic corrosion if it's not anodized. So the having anodized rivets is better. I mean, the whole like there's ways of mitigating corrosion which are much better than just relying on anodizing, but that's what we're playing in the bike industry. It's all sort of less than ideal, some of that stuff. You can see even on the genuine, there is some splintering of the fibers. You can see that. That's obviously a 45 uni, and when it was drilled, there was some splintering there. Here you can see that residue that was left in from the bag, the EPS molding system. So yeah, it's well, let's have a look at the at the fake. You can see it looks sort of quite rough through there. Now the really interesting thing is they've gone to the trouble of cutting a woven fabric ply to stop splintering, but they've put it in the wrong place, so it's above where they need to, and then you've got splintering and but also got some wrinkling and stuff through here. So yeah, so at this section, the points go to the genuine. That's being put together better than, even though it doesn't have the a fabric ply to prevent that splintering, like as the fake is. Well, it's in the wrong place, so it's not doing anything anyway. So you might as well not put it there. But also really big wrinkle through here too. That's a major problem there. So, and the top tube. So this is sort of the last sort of main tube of the bike that we'll look at. So the and look, they're pretty much on a par. There's not much difference. So it's similar to the down tube. There's minimal problems with that. As I said before, you don't know what the fiber type is and what effect that has, but from a molding point of view, not too bad. Does seem to be a little bit of a wrinkle sort of along that ridge that's sort of molded in there, but yeah, pretty close to being level with that. So now this is where it gets really interesting, because you might be able to see there are some cracks around the head tube junction there and there. And in fact, this whole area through here is delaminated. So the owner of the bike, he's a local guy in Melbourne, and he was riding out near Warrandyte, and that's sort of got some up and down hills, etc. He said that he was braking normally down one of the descents, and the bike started shaking like the headset bearings were loose. He found it hard to control the bike a little bit, so he slowed down and stopped, and then he noticed that the headset bearings were in fact loose, and there was that little sort of crack indication down on the head tube there. So he thought sort of better of it and thought, oh, I think I'll retire this bike. He said up until that point he'd never crashed the bike, no accidents or anything like that. So this is one of those JRA, just riding along, and this is what happened. So that's when he brought it in. Now let's have a bit of a look on why this could have happened. So if we go back to the slide where we showed the lower head tube junction, we can see a huge difference in the thickness between the original one, which that thickness there, And the copy, the fake, which is there. There's also a piece of foam here, which I spoke about earlier. And then you've got this big sort of void area through here where the headset cup is. So this is significantly different to what the genuine one is structurally in that area. So the thing to take note of is that it doesn't really matter what the bike looks like and what the paint job is and all these sorts of things if it can fail at the head tube and down tube junction, which could potentially kill you. So we have the real Pinarello on the left and we've got the fake Chinarello on the right. Now, as we went through before, visually they're pretty close. There's not that much dissimilarity to them. So they're pretty close. The graphics are pretty similar. Like if you just saw that bike going past, like someone was riding that bike going past you, you would not be able to pick the difference. But, and here's the crux of the matter. The copy is missing vital structural material at a critical area which could potentially kill you. So, that's the take home. Yes, it was built better around the C-tube junction. Yes, it was similar in other areas, but in a critical area, it's lacking significantly. So in this case, the rider was lucky that it didn't fail catastrophically and render him quite badly injured or even worse. So he was lucky. So there you have it. That's the Chinarello copy. So would I recommend buying a copy? Absolutely not. As you could see in that example, aspects of it were built well, but other aspects not so well. So, and I've said this over and over and over. The problem with these bikes is that you just don't know what you're getting. There's no accountability. There's no background. You've got no idea on what you're getting. So as we saw, the build process on the majority of the bike was okay, but the question you have to ask is, would you risk your life? And that's effectively what you're doing. Would you risk your life on something totally unknown? And there's people out there who go, yeah, I'll do that. Personally, I wouldn't. So that's not to say that that all Chinese bikes are no good, because we know that's rubbish. Because we know that the majority of the bikes, pretty much all the bikes, except a few, are made in China, and so it's not where the bike is made, whether it's good or bad. It's how the bike is made determines whether it's good or bad. And as we've seen, in the big brands bikes, there's some bad things going on as well. Not everything's perfectly rosy and fine and all that sort of stuff. However, as copies or counterfeits, should never be supported, in my opinion. They're taking shortcuts to they're piggybacking off other people's IP, all that sort of stuff. I've got no problems with other brands, other Chinese bikes who who are designing their own bikes, all that sort of stuff. No issues with that at all. Like, there's no way you can support a counterfeit item. That's unacceptable. And you know, they're passing off. They're not taking responsibility for themselves. That's probably one of the key fundamentals. So they're pretending that they're something else instead of what they really are. So lesson here is, don't support counterfeits. And in terms of you know, like Chinese bikes that, you know, are available on AliExpress or eBay, all that sort of stuff, it's really a case by case that you'd need to inspect, have a close inspection of that, you know, of those bikes before you ride it. And I've had that happen. I've had customers contact me and say, I'm buying this bike online. Can I get it shipped straight to you so you can do your inspection on it, and then tell me, you know, if it's worth, you know, if it's safe to ride and all that sort of stuff. And so we've done that a few times, and some of the bikes have been put together well, others not so well. So one of the things that we've found is that often the fit of things like the bearings and like headset bearings, etc. You know, that sort of area was lacking. So it's that finer detail which was often sort of not quite right. But I mean, as I've shown, you can get that on the name brands as well. But you know, so personally, I don't ride any bike that I haven't scanned. So, but I've got the ability to do that, and so I do. Anyway, I hope you learned something from this. You know, that you can see that it's more than just a visual package. So, you know, the thing with a bike is, if it fails in a critical area at the wrong time, you can get killed. So it's not just what the bike looks like, it's how it functions, how it is structurally, that really makes a difference. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. This video has been it's been a long time coming, a long time in the making. I finally had some time to get this done. So leave any comments down below. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of this sort of stuff. There's some other things I'm sort of looking at doing with the channel to sort of to try and get more content out there. So tell your friends, support the channel, leave comments, subscribe, like, all that sort of stuff. You know what it is. And I'll see you again soon. Okay, bye.